Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you the best OBS recording settings in 2026. So at the same time I'm going to show you how to set up OBS and so how to use OBS as well. But first guys, if you want, you can go down on this video in the comment section and click on the first comment that I pinned. This will bring you to my Fiverr and here you can get a YouTube logo and banner or a modern minimalist YouTube logo and banner for your YouTube channel. But now back to the video. Now I am in OBS itself right here. First thing you always want to do before anything is go up to Profile. Then you will want to create a new profile and name that whatever you want. You can also have of course different ones. That is always the very first option you have to do. Then once you created it, as you can see, I have mine already up here. Within that, you can create new scenes and sources. I always want to start by adding a scene. I already have one here, but you can always right click to add scene. You call this whatever you want. Then of course it will be right here. Now within those scenes, you can always add multiple sources, as you can see. So I have a source. I have one display capture because I'm capturing my screen at the moment. Nothing else because I'm only showing my screen for the tutorial. What you can do is just right click here. Same idea. You just go to add source in this case. Now once again, I for example did a display capture. But you can also just add one image, do a window capture. So you're going to actually record a specific window. Now what a lot of you also might be wondering about is how to add a game capture. Now same if you right click to add source, game capture is just going to be underneath. You click on it. Once again, name this whatever you want. You click OK. And then here you want to make sure that this mode you do capture specific window. And if you have any games running, select that game in question because then it will specifically record that game window and only that. So that's very important. If you have a game running, once again also make sure that the game is running. You select here in the drop down menu. Once you've done that, you can also go down here to add an audio track together with your game. So you can record the audio of your game at the same time. You can test around with that if you want. Then some other ones here. Capture cursor if you want that. So if you want to see your own cursor. And I advise you to select use anti-cheat compatibility hook. Make sure that is checked, I would say. And for the color space down here, I do advise you to select RGB and you can click OK. Okay, so then once we've added our scenes and sources, we can of course go ahead to the OBS settings where we will start in the General tab. In General tab, there's really not much to do. You just want to make sure you select the right language you want. I've set it to English. Now update channel though, that's quite important. I've set it to stable, latest stable release by default. But you can also in some cases do the beta so that you will have pre-release versions, but they might be a bit unstable of course because they are beta versions. So if you want to early test out some OBS versions, you can select that one, but do keep in mind they will be more unstable and can have some more errors as well. That's why I do advise you to select stable, latest stable release. Underneath, I do advise you as well to select automatically check for updates on startup. That basically means whenever there's a new update for OBS, it will tell you that there is a new update available and that you can immediately update to the latest version if that's something you want, of course. For the rest here, nothing really to keep in mind, some preferences. Now whenever you're done in a tab, you click apply, and if you're done in the settings, you click OK, and that will close it as well. But otherwise, just click apply if you've only finished one tab. So we can just go back up here and go to the Appearance tab. So this is going to be the appearance, the theme of OBS itself. Now the theme is set to Yummy and the style I went for classic. Of course, you can do something else. You can play around with some colors, the font size as well. So all of the text that is here, and also the density if you want it to be normal, compact. Those are all preferences. You can sometimes bring this down, for example, the style to make a slight difference, but really it doesn't really affect your performance. Now I will not be going over the Stream tab because this is the best OBS recording settings. So I'm going to go ahead to Output. Then to the right, I'm going to select the Recording tab because once again, we're doing it for recording. Important to start off, make sure the output mode is on advanced. This will allow you to have more options, which is going to be very important. Underneath that, it's going to be type, you set it to standard. Then we have the recording path. This is where your recordings are going to be saved. That is something you can simply change yourself if you go to browse. Then you just want to select where you want your videos to be saved to, so you can also create your own folder and save it there. That is entirely up to you, just as long as you remember where you saved it. Underneath that, we have something that is very important actually, which is going to be recording format. I've selected to MKV because this will actually create two files just in case something happens with your PC or it crashes, becomes corrupt. To always record upon the moment something happens. And I'll later show you how to actually do that by selecting a setting on how to actually remux it to MP4, so that you also have the MP4 file. I'll show you that a bit later on. Now alternatively to MKV, it's also going to be like MP4 but save more frequently throughout the recording up until a certain point. So you will be less likely to actually lose anything. But it is actually quite a good option to go for the fragmented MP4 as well. But really what I will probably most recommend in this case is actually going to be Hybrid MP4. This will first of all make sure that you have one file, so it's not like MKV where you have two files, which is useful, but if you prefer to have it just as one file, you can go for the Hybrid MP4. And it also, same with the MKV, saves up until, for example, if something happens with your PC, it crashes, once again becomes corrupt, anything like that, it will be recorded up until that point as well. So you won't lose anything, your file will be automatically saved. Once again, even though something happens to your PC, you will still have that file, and it will only be one file once again, if you do Hybrid MP4. So that's why it's one that I probably most advise doing here. Now I do on to lastly talk about MP4. So if you just select MP4, it is actually something I would not advise you to do. Don't do it, because if you're recording in MP4, if anything happens, it will not be saved. So your whole recording will be gone. Computer crashes, power goes out, doesn't matter. Your whole recording will be gone if you only select MP4. So don't do that. It is once again way better to just select Hybrid MP4 in that case, or if you want to, the MKV and then the Remux to MP4 later on. But the standalone MP4 recording format is not advised. Keep that in mind, it is pretty important. Underneath that, we're gonna have the video encoder. I've set it to NVIDIA NVENC H264. You can alternatively also go for the AMD options if you have them, and in that case I would go for the AMD HW H265. Make sure you use the HEVC as well. The file size will be smaller and you also get a better image quality. So if you have that AMD option, I would say go for that one. Now if you have, like me, an NVIDIA graphics card, you will have the NVIDIA options here as well. And in that case you actually have the choice between the NVIDIA NVENC, so H264, the one that I have, but also the HEVC. You can look for yourself which one you prefer. HEVC is probably a bit more recommended, but don't worry, the H264 also gets the job done. Now if you have neither of those, if you have like an older PC and you don't have those options, there's also the X264. That option isn't really advised because it will use your CPU instead of your GPU mainly. So do make sure that the CPU of your PC is pretty good in that case. And also if you have to put some settings down in the encoder settings that I'll also show you in a second here, bring some settings down and see what works best for you in your case. Then the audio encoder. Now you will have multiple options here. I do generally advise you to go for the FFmpeg AAC, and I would say that in most cases that is the best option to go for. If you have another preference in mind, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I really advise you to do this setting. Now just underneath that, we also have the audio tracks, so you can have multiple ones. I have two. One audio track is going to be my desktop audio, so any sounds within Windows. Of course, also like music, YouTube, whatever. And two is going to be my microphone, which obviously is going to be directly connected to my microphone where the signal will come from. And of course, you can add some additional audio tracks if you need to, but I generally only use two. You can just leave it as it is. Then down in the encoder settings, now if you use the AMD or in my case the NVIDIA as a video encoder, I advise you to go for constant QP. And now I've set it on 17, but you really should ideally be between like 15 and 25. That's really like the wide range that you can go. But I do generally advise you to go more into the middle, so be it at like 20, because you still have a good quality and a bigger file size. And as I said, I put it on 17, but don't really go below that because the file size is going to be way too big for nothing really. So you can put it a bit up, and I would say start at around 20, that's good, and then you can work yourself down, maybe up even towards like 25, but that's really up to you. Don't go down too much, once again, for the file size as well. Keyframe interval could be at 0, but I do advise you to put this at 2 in most cases. As you can see in seconds, if 0 it's going to be auto, but 2 seconds I do believe it's a bit better. By default it probably will be on 0. Don't hesitate in this case to actually bring it up to like not more than, I would say, 2 seconds. Preset, you have multiple options. I won't really advise you to go for the fastest and then the lowest or lower qualities, because obviously it will have less of a good quality. But contrary to that, I also don't advise you to put it on the slowest and the best quality. That's also not something I would advise. It's better in this case really to put it around the middle. So like medium, I put it on slow, good quality, which works fine for me. Tuning, high quality. I definitely advise you to go for high quality in this case. 2 passes, and then here profile high. And the B frames down here, you can set it to 2. Then I'm going to set it to CBR, which is actually something I would advise you to do if you're using the X264 as a video encoder. You can start on the lower side towards like 3000, but you can already pretty quickly put this up to like 5000 and all the way up to like 10,000. Of course, look what's best for you. You could also start putting that a bit higher, between 10,000 and 20,000. You can start bringing it up, you know. Now, once again, I do advise you to have the keyframe interval at 2 seconds. The CPU itself between like very fast and ultra fast. So in this case, like the faster, so more up here, the better the quality is going to be. So I don't really advise you to go too low. Really, in this case, even if it might sound contradictory, very fast and ultra fast are gonna be the best options. Can alternate between the two, see which ones works best. Might have to bring it down in some cases, but that's what I would advise you to do. Profile high as well in this case. Advise you to put tune, 0 latency. There's going to be multiple options here. Of course, it's going to help with latency between these options. See which one works best, but in most cases, I would advise you really to select, just go for the 0 latency in this case. Okay, then I'm going to go up to the small audio tab here. As I said earlier, you do have to select FFmpeg AAC as an audio encoder. In that case, it will be useful to actually go to the tracks here. Now, I have only used 2 tracks. As I said, this was going to be my desktop sound, so anything Windows, YouTube, Spotify, and the microphone is going to be on track 2. I just set it all to 320, which is going to be the best audio quality, by the way. You can also, just in case, put it down to 160. So then I'm going to go to the actual audio tab. Start up here, the sample rate. I do advise you to put it at 48,000 kilohertz. There are going to be cases where you want to put this at 44,100 kilohertz. But generally speaking, also in like the world of music and mixing, 48,000 kilohertz is going to be a better quality. Anything like underneath 44,000 is going to be a bit too low. And everything above 48,000 kilohertz is going to be a bit too high for nothing. So choose between those two options. I just have mine always at 48,000. Channels, just set it to stereo. Here's going to be your input and output. So the desktop audio first here is going to be the output, which I've selected to my speakers. So I just hear it in my headphones. Now if you have other software, like for example Voice Meter, you will also be able to select anything else here. And any other softwares that you might have downloaded and it gets picked up here by OBS, you can select it as well as an output if that's something you want. Otherwise, by default, just put it on your speakers. Then for the input, so it's going to be a microphone. Obviously, if you have one, select the microphone. In my case, it's a Blue Yeti, so it's the one I selected. And also, as I said, if you have like a software like Voice Meter, you can select one right here and just select another input, or once again, any other software that you might have downloaded in the past. You can also add them at times as an input as well. And of course, you will be able to add multiple ones. Okay, so then I'm going to go to the video tab. So as you can see here in the video tab, we have the option with the resolution and also the FPS. So this is going to be basically the screen, so the aspect ratio, the resolution that you would want to record your video in. And so you want to distinguish also the two because we have two options, the base canvas resolution and the output scaled resolution. The base canvas is going to be your monitor resolution. So whatever you bought your monitor resolution in, so mine is a 24-inch screen, so it's 16:9 aspect ratio, also known as 1920 by 1080 pixels. So that's the one I have, and you don't want to change that base canvas because it's going to be the one of your screen, so you don't need to change that one. But then on the contrary, you want to go to the output scaled resolution, and that one is the one that you can change because that will be the output. So that is what other people, so that is the actual resolution that you will see. The base canvas is going to be just my screen, but the output scaled is what OBS is going to show you as a viewer, what is going to be the actual resolution. Now you can bring this down, of course, if you're running any problems, you can scale it down to like 1280 by 720, which is an older and lower resolution at this point, for example. But you can also put it up, of course, to 2K, but also 4K, if you have the possibility, of course, with your PC. In my case, I don't have access to the downscale filter because I selected the NVIDIA. But if you're, for example, using the X264, you can have a couple of options in the drop-down menu here. Now test to see which one works best for you in terms of the downscale filters. But most of the time, you probably just want to go for Lanczos, or at times also for the bilinear. Underneath that, we have the FPS, very important. You can consider putting this down to 30, but I would say in most cases that is not necessarily anymore nowadays. And you should easily be able to put it to 60 FPS. Of course, really depending on what you're recording as well. And of course, the resolution plays a role as well. This is of course also something you can do in combination with your settings. Sometimes you might have to bring some settings down. The FPS wouldn't be able to keep up. But once again, in most cases, you should not have any problem just selecting 60. Then I'm going to go to the Hotkeys tab. This is going to be mostly for preferences. So if you want a certain key on your keyboard, so for example, as you can see, start recording. So you would go here and select the certain key that you want. Pause the recording. Also add chapters, by the way, which is very nice, that you can actually add multiple chapters. So this is going to add a marker whenever you press a certain key on your keyboard. During the recorder, you can select that key and it's going to make a marker on your project file. And once you import it into like an editing software, no matter which one you use, you will be able to see those chapter markers. And so that will actually make it a bit more easier to edit because you will actually put down a marker and you remember certain parts of your video. So that can always be nice. And so basically anything else here that you want to start or stop or do on command, you can actually just once again select this field and select a key and use it as a hotkey, so a key bind if you will. Then underneath that we have the Accessibility tab. Not really much to do here. You can change around the colors of different things within OBS. And you can also change the color preset if you want to have a different preset. And this of course is also something you could adapt for you in case you are, for example, colorblind to a certain degree, changing around the colors. Otherwise, of course, there will not be much to do here. And then go to the last tab, which is Advanced. To start off the process priority, I do advise you to be it on above normal. By default, maybe be on normal, but to give a bit more priority to OBS, and of course it does also the recording, I do advise you to set it on at least above normal or maybe high at times. That little priority boost can definitely help you with, of course, your performance within OBS, obviously. So that's definitely something to consider. You can also select Show Active Outputs Warning on Exit, just in case. In the video, you just want to make sure the render is on DirectX 11, the color space on NV12, and very important, I do advise you to put the color space on Rec 709. The color range could be on limited or full. Honestly, both work. A lot of times you can just put it to full as well, or limited, as long as don't make the screen a bit darker. You want to avoid that, so just do a test recording there. Here is something we saw earlier that is very important if you went for MKV. Once again, if anything happens to your recording, it will still be saved up until that point. And by doing that, once you finish a recording, it will also automatically remux to MP4, but you have to have this option selected. Very important. So that will mean that you have the MKV file after your recording and an MP4 file. You have 2 files. And of course, the MP4 file is the one that you want to use, and the MKV is like the backup file that you have. But once again, if you actually went for the MKV, do make sure that this is selected to remux to MP4. As I said earlier, make sure that at every tab you click apply, and when you're actually done, you can click OK. And what I also wanted to show you, so with the more recent updates, there's also a bit of a change in the layout, especially here in the audio mixer. Now in the past you had to actually go down and go to Advanced Audio Settings, but that's not the case anymore, because if you actually want to hear yourself speak in OBS, all you have to do now is click on this. This right here. Now of course for me it's disabled because otherwise I will hear myself. All you have to do is click this and you'll be able to hear yourself. Then lastly, what is also something that is pretty important, if you go and click on this, you can go to filters. I have an in-depth video about this on my channel. I'll put it up here in the right corner so that you can check out that video if you want. And there I actually show you all of the different effects and also the right order that I put these filters in, because that is important in that video. So if you actually want to know more about this, that's also actually, by the way, the current effects that are on my voice that you're hearing right now. That is all these settings here. So if you want to know how to actually use those filters and change your voice in OBS, once again, make sure you check out that video. But I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Okay, so there you go. That is everything I wanted to show you, so that you can actually go ahead and start recording in OBS. If you have any questions, of course, leave them down below. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, it would be really nice. Subscribe would also be really nice. Hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye.